So cured egg yolks really fits into the category of homemade condiments because of the way that you'll end up using it. And making condiments at home is actually just a really healthy way of learning how to flavor your food without just a whole array of additives and colorants and chemicals and preservatives.
Farm to table.
Hi guys! Here on the farm we have a lot of egg-laying birds, from chickens to ducks to guinea fowl, and that means that we often have an abundance of eggs. One of the things that I really wanted to learn how to do was to preserve those eggs that can be enjoyed when the birds are not laying. One of the ways of preserving eggs is water glassing eggs, and you may have come across that on social media. However, there is another way of preserving egg yolks in salt, and you might wonder why on earth you would want to do that. Well, believe it or not, curing egg yolks actually concentrates their flavor and their texture, and they become like these little golden nuggets of umami savoriness. You can use them like a seasoning, you can grate them and sprinkle them like a condiment on food, and it's really easy to do, so I want to walk you through the process. So curing is really just a method of preservation, and there are different types of curing. So today we are going to be using salt as the method of curing. It's a dry cure, so we're basically going to be submerging the egg yolks into a salt bed and leaving them to completely dry out. What preserving is doing is making the environment inhospitable for bacterial growth. Bacteria love heat and they love moisture. So by removing those two components, you are going to be making your food environment a very difficult place for any bacteria to grow. So for quantities and measurements, I will put all of that information in the show notes with a link to my blog. The first part of this recipe is super simple and it'll take about 10 minutes of your time. So you're going to want a large dish or container of some sort, and you're going to make a bed of salt. And if you use the back of a spoon, that's a really easy way to create little wells in your salt bed, which will allow the egg yolk to be placed in and stay in place. Because when the egg yolk goes in, it's obviously wet and it can burst and run all over the place. I had a couple burst on me. Then that will just help contain the egg yolk while it starts to dry out. So after you have added each egg yolk to the indents in the salt, you are going to cover the egg yolks completely with the rest of your salt, and then you're going to put some cling wrap over the dish and you're going to put it away in the fridge. You can let it sit there for about 5 days, that would be optimum, but it doesn't matter if you go a little bit longer. Okay, so here we are, it's actually 3 weeks later. Salt is a preservative, so there is no harm done. So I'm going to take these out and show you what they look like. The salt and sugar mix in here has actually gone quite crusty. So I'm going to use a spoon to dig out these egg yolks. There's the egg yolk. It is kind of tacky on its surface. So all I'm going to do is I am going to wipe off the excess salt with this paper towel. It's kind of damp, and then I'm going to put it on my dehydrating tray. So for the second part of this process, the old school way of doing this would be, oh look, those are all joined together. The old school way would be to dust them off as I'm doing and put them into some muslin or cheesecloth and hang them to dry for another 7 days in a place where it's cool, so ideally below 50 degrees. You can definitely put them back in the fridge like that, but because I left them a little bit longer in the salt mixture curing, I'm actually going to put mine in the dehydrator. So I'm going to lay them out here on my dehydrating mat. You can also complete step 2 of the process in an oven, but only if your oven can be set at those kind of low temperatures for dehydrating. The lower the temperature, it basically you're wanting to sort of air dry them. The end product should be completely dry to the touch, whereas these are just a little bit tacky and sticky. Look at that one. Perfect. They sort of look like apricots. I've read questions from people who have been investigating this subject and wondering if they can reuse the salt and sugar mixture. The mixture that you use is actually, it can be expensive because it requires quite a large volume of salt if you're, doing a good number of egg yolks. You can reuse the mixture, but you would have to dry it out in your oven. So right now, this salt and sugar mix is sort of damp. So that's the first dish done. I'm gonna do the second dish now. I got another kitchen towel. You can see with some of these misshapen ones that as I cracked the egg yolk into the mixture, it sort of didn't stay in one piece, but they split open, but that's okay. I am absolutely fascinated right now with curing meats and being able to make food shelf stable without a lot of processing. It is the gateway to charcuterie. When I lived in the Middle East, you'd go riding in the desert, and we would often, when we get right out into the desert, pass sort of accommodations or huts that were usually adjacent to where there were camel farms and places like that. And there was one particular time I was riding past a hut and I could just see this like huge mound of salt, and it appeared to have what was some goat legs sticking out the back. And the rider who was with me explained that it was indeed goat meat that was being cured just under amount of salt. And as I say, we're in the desert, so it was actually quite hot, although it'd be winter time in the desert, but still daytime temperatures would definitely be warmer than the winters here. So it just always really intrigued me. And then another place which is interesting to go to, if any of you have ever visited the UK, up in the northeast where I'm from is a living museum called Beamish. You can look it up online. And it is sort of a recreation of the life and times of Britain from, the previous 2 centuries. And I always really remember being intrigued by this one house that you go into and you walk around sort of, the upstairs and downstairs and the bedrooms. And what it doesn't take you long to notice is that these great big sort of lumps of meat hanging just by twine from the roof. And there was, ones in the bedroom and ones downstairs in sort of the mudroom. And there would be hams or rabbits or partridges. And just always really intrigued me as to how an item of food could be hanging without going bad. So that's kind of what has been in the backdrop of my intrigue into learning these old ways of preserving. And I think when you look online, you have to do quite a lot of reading and cross-referencing to get the quality information. There are some blogs and even YouTube videos that are a little bit light. They don't really give you the full information. And so when you, like me, and you have lots of questions, you sort of have to do quite a lot of reading and research to sort of pull together the full story. Okay, and I think we are done. Okay, so I am going to take these egg yolks and put them in the dehydrator. Okay, so I set it actually at 99 degrees for 2 hours, after which I will store them in a jar in the fridge. So once you have created your egg yolks, you absolutely must use them. As I said earlier, you can use them as a condiment. You can grate them just like Parmesan cheese. You can sprinkle them on top of avocado toast. You could put them on your spaghetti carbonara or any pasta dishes. You can sprinkle them anywhere where you want just a little bit of that savoriness, like that umami flavor, which is absolutely delicious. There's also another sneaky way to use them. Egg yolks are natural emulsifiers, so they will bring together liquids that don't necessarily mix, like oil and vinegar. So if you're wanting to make a salad dressing, you can use one of your cured egg yolks, which is going to bring that dressing together. You can also add them to soups if you're wanting a little bit of savoriness added and a way to thicken your soup up. So they're really versatile. I really encourage you to give this a go. If you are someone who is just learning how to cure and preserve food at home, then you definitely want to check out my next video where I will be taking a fresh ham from our pasture-raised pigs and I will be curing it using a wet brine method. There's also other videos coming up. If you're wondering what you're going to do with all of those leftover egg whites from today's video, then I am going to be making some delicious farmhouse meringues. Stay tuned.